I bet it's a lot more like scary with all those like big spaces on the big screen.
Yeah, those big spaces are incredible, and the yeah, all the camera work just looks amazing. Oh,
We should
oh
start
yeah,
recording.
yeah.
Welcome back to Modern Horror Stories podcast with Jamie, Dave, and Rosanna. We have a special guest today, Rosanna Vickberg, who is an actress and filmmaker, and also a fan of the film that we're about to review, and that is The Shining from 1980, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Shall we reveal our scores? So we all like this film. I've got a feeling this might be the film we've kind of liked the most as a trio. So who wants to kick off with a synopsis before we get into the discussion?
I can do it. So the film follows a family, Wendy, his mother, a child named Danny, and a dad named Jack. And it starts off with Jack getting a job as watching a hotel over the winter. So they're just gonna stay there from the beginning of winter until May. So they move into the hotel, they meet everyone, but then everyone leaves. And slowly this isolation like starts making the dad kind of lose it, basically, if I'm not gonna spoil.
Well, that's a good point. That's a nice synopsis and a good point. At some point, I'm sure there will be spoilers. Although it's a really well-known film, so it's not sure how much we can spoil. And we all liked it. And Jamie, you're the only person here who's seen it in the big screen.
Oh yes. Yeah, my girlfriend treated me to a viewing of it at Curzon Cinemas. They did a Halloween night screening of The Shining, and it was amazing. It was, funnily enough, I've seen the film a couple of times before years ago, and I didn't like it. I really didn't like it, and I was dreading this review because I knew I had to watch the film. And then I saw it on Halloween night, and it really blew me away. It's an incredible film. I don't know exactly why I didn't like it before, because it's brilliant. But maybe the cinema really added something to it, because so much of what makes it great is the incredible shots of the hotel, and these incredible sort of tracking shots following people around the hotel. It's really masterfully done. And the whole time I was watching it, I was like, I've seen someone do that in another film that's more recent than this, and I've seen someone do that in another film. Like, I feel like, I mean, I don't know how much The Shining references other films, but I feel like a lot of films reference The Shining in multiple genres, and I just thought it was a masterpiece, really.
But only 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
So I agree with you completely about second viewing, because the first viewing I had was about 20 years ago, and it felt very different to the sort of horror films I'd seen before, and painfully slow. And then I saw it again about 5 years later, and I was really surprised, because I knew it was going to be slow, so I was prepared this time. But this time I completely appreciate it in a kind of different way. Once you're prepared for the pace, which is completely different to the sort of horror films that are more commercial, then it's a totally different experience. And also, it's not based on so much on story and character, which is kind of my big thing, really, story and character. And I feel like the story is very simple. I mean, Rosanna's now the story, and the characters don't change so much. But everything else is just off the scale brilliant. The atmospherics, the visuals, the soundscapes. It's an immersive experience. That's how I found it.
Yeah, I think that is where it's lacking, depending on, I'm sure it was on purpose, this thing of like not giving characters backstories and all of that. But yeah, it makes up for everything in the visual, in my opinion, because like it's just so much. Like, it's so well made. Like, I've talked to you about this before, but like the symmetry in the shots, I tried to mimic it with my setup here today. But just the symmetry, and he makes it work in every single shot. There's some movies where they have great symmetry, but they'll only like use it for the special shots. But he just keeps on using it through the whole movie. Like, he doesn't hold back, and there's no reason to hold back, because it is gonna make us feel like uneasy having that perfect symmetry at all time. And then there's so many other like visual details, like you can watch it so many times and always discover something new. Like, for example, when Danny is sitting with that man who works in the hotel in the kitchen, there are knives hanging right above his head, kind of foreshadowing what's about to happen. And when Jack is having the interview, he's wearing a green tie, and on the green tie is the pattern of the mace that we see later on. And like in almost every single shot, there's things you can, like little Easter eggs you can discover. And this is like just 2 out of like a million things like that makes me like really appreciate rewatching this movie.
Wowee, I didn't notice those Easter eggs. I mean, I saw the knives later when when Wendy was standing near them after she just locked Jack in there. That I saw that rack of knives, but I didn't notice it during the earlier scene, and I definitely didn't notice the tie. That's so cool.
Right?
Yeah, I like your description as of the film creating a sense of unease. I think that's perfect, because from the very first shot with the long tracking shot following the car in, which would have been easy with a drone these days, but I'm guessing it would have been quite difficult back in the 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had this feeling of unease throughout the whole film. And I couldn't really, because I'm not a filmmaker as such, I couldn't put my finger on what was creating that. But you feel it immediately. And I feel that it's only people's prejudices about going into what they expect from a horror film, which might detract on the first viewing. I think if you prepare people the right way, this is a real masterpiece, as you said, Jeremy.
For sure. Because even in the 80s, obviously they would, like, the horror movies would be very horror. They would be very like dark spaces, jump scares, blood everywhere. I mean, there are a lot of blood in The Shining as well. But I think like this is one of the first, as far as I know, like uses of liminal spaces to scare you instead of things hiding in the shadows and stuff like that. Which to many people I think is a lot scarier than those like dark horror movies.
Yeah, because we've probably all been in a space like that, like a hospital corridor or even a hotel, like this is. Or maybe even our old schools were like that to some extent, especially when the corridors were empty. It's sort of this long, echoey, endless seeming sort of corridor, and there is a sense that anything could happen in those sorts of spaces. And especially if you're isolated from society for 5 months, and something the film does brilliantly is that there's that whole, during the job interview, there's quite a light-hearted conversation about, by the way, you're going to be completely cut off. There's no way to access this hotel. There's no way to leave this hotel, which I thought was a really great setup for what's to come, because you know that they're, right from the get-go, you know that as soon as they set through that door, they're not getting out, which when stuff starts to go wrong, it really heightens the stakes.
Do you remember, I mean, given the fact we've all seen this many times, what was the moment when you felt like, oh wow, this is going to become we're stepping into horror movie territory now? When does the insanity really start?
Depends exactly what you mean, but very early on, Danny's in the bathroom and he has a vision of blood and death. So
that's true.
About 5 minutes in.
I see what you mean. Yes, I guess for me, the moment where I'm the madness is kind of overtaking everything is when she's going through the pages of the book that he's
Oh
written.
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was the moment, and that stuck with me the first time. It was like, oh wow, so this is a horror film. But you're right. There's lots of foretelling, and there's lots of like images that tell us we're in a horror movie. But I think once she goes through the book and every page says the same thing,
Mm.
for me that's kind of like the big turning point, and it's like we're onto the roller coaster of horror at that point.
Mm.
I'm trying to remember, was that before or after Danny had the bruises on his neck?
Just
I think
before.
just
Or
before.
no.
I think it was just that.
Yeah, I think it was just after.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the bruises for my neck and on his neck and room 237. That was for me. That was when I didn't think Jack had done it. I thought Ghost had done it.
Mm.
So and Jack's having the nightmare, like, and that scene where he's describing his nightmare, it's so amazing, and he seems genuinely so disturbed by the possibility that he could be about to do these horrible things.
Yeah.
And then
And
he
I
goes,
see some details on that scene that might make it a bit creepier.
"Ooh, okay."
Throughout the whole movie, he's wearing green for the first half of the movie. But from that moment on, he just wears reds. So like that's like a suggestion that that's where something like kind of flips for him.
Oh.
Also, they made some purposeful like continuity errors in that very scene that kind of makes it suggesting that something is really, really off. Like a chair keeps disappearing and appearing in the back, and a couple of things like that. This is just from like reading film analysis. By the way, I'm not like noticing everything myself. But yeah.
Something that I've always wanted to do, and I've never got around to it. But I'm going to ask you guys. Perhaps you have. Have you seen Stephen King's version of this, Uwe?
A long time ago, when I was a teenager, like it was in 2 parts, I think.
It was in a couple of parts, yeah.
No.
Yeah, I saw it when I was about 14.
And how do you feel about that?
I can barely remember it, but I do remember that the ending was very different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the bits of trivia that's quite famous is that Stephen King hates this film.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's because it's about a writer, and I think so I've read that the character is kind of based on himself, and in the book he's kind of gets some kind of redemption, and in this film he doesn't get any redemption whatsoever. I think that might be one of the angles that might upset him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard he was pretty upset with that. Like the Jack doesn't like slowly go into his madness, but he's there from the beginning, which is also one of my criticisms with the movie. But also, it does make it so much like so much different from other films as well. So, like, you maybe don't need that character arc in every movie, but I know that's one of his criticisms as well.
I wonder what would have happened if Kubrick had asked him to go from like 1 to 10, as I think Stephen King would have preferred. It would be a slightly different film. I'm not sure if it'd be a better film, but even without 1 to 3 of sanity, it's still an amazing descent into madness. And that, yeah, when you mention that scene where he's crouching under the table, reliving his dream, it's just amazing. Shelley Duvall comes into criticism about her performance. It isn't so appreciated. How do you feel about that? Especially since it seems to be the performance that Stanley Kubrick wanted. It doesn't seem to get the appreciation.
I have to say, when I first watched it, I think I watched it twice before seeing it at the cinema just recently. I those first 2 times, I really didn't like her performance. I felt it was quite weak, but watching it again, I thought it was brilliant. I think she really carried that sense of nervousness. So, like Rosanna, you were describing how she's treading on eggshells around Jack, and I think she carries that really well. And her terror and fear and horror at the things that are happening, I think, is so precisely right. I feel.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
complete.
I think so. I think so too. And I think, given the fact that he's never completely sane, uh, the fact that she starts very anxious at the beginning kind of implies the backstory that we don't see. Maybe when they first met, she wasn't like that, but it feels like she's already quite near the edge. Uh,
Mm.
Everyone starts at 4 in this film.
yeah,
Yeah,
everyone starts at 4.
I'm sure.
What did you think, Rosanna, about Shelley Duvall's?
I agree 100% with what you said. Like, because the thing is, I understand at the beginning thinking that, for example, when she interacts with others and she's like, "Oh, this is so wonderful" and stuff, that it seems like bad acting. But I think it's actually good acting, because I think that's because she is nervous and she's afraid like Jack is gonna get angry if she acts wrong, and like that's what I get from it now after watching it. Maybe I didn't think that either the first time, but that's definitely what I get from it now. Someone that's always walking on eggshells, and they're not gonna sound genuine because they're gonna worry about what someone else is thinking. Yeah.
So, to bring this to a close, how would you frame this film for someone who's never seen it? They're going to see it for the first time. What do you think would be the perfect setup to give someone who's about to settle down and watch 2.5 hours of The Shining?
Do you mean like how you're gonna kind of prepare them for it mentally?
Yes, because both Jamie and I both were disappointed on first viewing.
Mm.
I think it's quite a common experience. My brother also has this film in his DVD collection, but told me the first time he saw it, he didn't like it.
Mm.
So what would set someone up to enjoy this on first viewing, do you think?
I think to kind of tell them about like some of the, like, for example, some of the details, like tell them to try to notice these details, these Easter eggs that are left everywhere, and these continuity errors that they make on purpose and stuff like that. Because I think it's not going to be a boring film if you look for those things. There is something in almost every shot like that. And then just tell them about how it was very innovative at the time. A lot of things they did, like using this big liminal spaces instead of these dark shadows, and using the Steadicam, which wasn't very common at the time. I think it was newly invented, actually, to notice how it's being filmed. So I think, for example, the Steadicam really contributes to like the feeling of the hotel having a spirit of its own, because there is something always kind of moving around that doesn't have anything to do with the characters, if you know what I mean. So if you let them in on these details and like fun facts about the film, I think they're definitely going to enjoy it, because there's so much else to enjoy with it anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would say, have you both seen Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1?
No.
So that for me, I'm normally a fan of plot and story, and I felt like I had no idea what was going on in Dune 1 at all, but I loved it nonetheless because the cinematography is just mind-blowing. And I think it might not be fair to do a direct comparison between Dune and The Shining, because The Shining I felt I followed a bit more than I followed Dune, but I think similarly, if you like big cinematography, then this is a film for you, and I recommend watching it either with your face really close to the screen or watch it at a cinema. Not that I'm recommending putting your face near a screen. I don't know of the health detriment of that, but how about you, Dave?
So I actually saw a online a trailer for The Shining, and I'm not sure if it's the official trailer, but if it is, then it's actually quite a good one for the movie. because it's just the scene with the lift and the blood, and that's it. That's the only image that you see from the film, and I quite like that as a trailer. So I can't imagine. Surely that wasn't the only trailer, but if it was, I think it's actually quite a good one, because when I think of this movie, I think of Jack Nicholson hacking through a door and putting his head through and saying, "Here's Johnny." And if that's the image that you go to see the film with, I feel like you're being misled a little bit, because that kind of heightened intensity only appears quite near the end, whereas the kind of the lift being swallowed up by blood in slow motion, I think prepares you a bit more for the intensity that's to come.
I don't think I've seen any film use blood as well as The Shining does in that scene, and I've definitely seen films try to pour gallons of blood here, there, and everywhere, but I don't think that scene is just so effective. I think the lift opening and just this thick, dark blood just filling the corridor. It's incredible.
And it's unconnected to anything else in
Yeah.
the film. I mean, I guess it's a metaphor for what happens, but in terms of actual kind of literal connection, totally unconnected to anything else that happens in the film. So on that note, how do you feel about The Shining? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and join us tomorrow when all three of us will be telling you how we will make The Shining even better. See you then.
So, we didn't talk about Danny at all.
No, wow. I don't know if this is true or not, but one of the things I read was that Kubrick was actually really nice to unlike the other actors. Kubrick was really nice to Danny, and actually told him he was in a drama rather than a horror film, and recontextualized it for Danny, so he wasn't scared.
That's smart.
Yeah,
It is. I mean, in contrast to how he treated Shelley Duvall.
Yeah.
And Scatman Crothers as well. Like,
Yeah.
Yes, I know. That's a classic story. Have you heard of? You know, when Scatman Crothers is killed,
Yeah.
he gets hit in an axe in the chest, and they cut away. When they were filming it, Stanley Kubrick had a long shot, a wide shot where you see Scatman Crothers fall over. And I mean, he was 70 when he made this film.
Oh, wow.
And he made him do it like 80 times.
Oh my God.
And in the end, he begs Stanley not, I don't want to do this shot anymore.
Yeah.
And then they didn't use it in the film.
Oh, that's horrible.
I know.
Yeah. It's sometimes you wonder what's just like practicing power and what's actually trying to get like a good shot. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and a couple of movies ago, we saw Audition. Have you seen Audition?
No.
And I mean, this is a very good film as well. And they filmed it in like 2 weeks. And they only did 1 or 2 takes of everything.
yeah,
And
it's like the antithesis of this.
It is. It's the anti-Kubrick film. And he got a lot of, I mean, there were certain things where you think maybe he should have done a few more takes. But he got a lot of things great, didn't he? A lot of the spontaneity was superb. So, should we do our 3 things to improve The Shining?